Good afternoon. We're happy to welcome you at the fourth Women's Congress, and today we're going to speak about the widening of economic capabilities for women, and this issue is not really something virtual, is not a theoretical question. It's an issue of simple economic pragmatism. Based on the most recent survey, the increase of the participation of women in the economy could increase the potential by 28 billion. That is the indicator for the world. And we are now in the period of economic crisis, mostly related to the coronavirus pandemics. So the issue of further engagement to the economics is the issue of survival, because women are one of the largest groups of population that suffered a lot because of the pandemics, and the world surveys conducted by the International World Bank and the International Fund shows that in the type of pandemics, the women had to make a third job, because they have to take care of the kids, they have to take care of the family, they have to do the disinfection for the family, they have to deal with the hygiene and many other things. Besides, women are working in those areas that suffered a lot because of the pandemics, that is the spheres and sectors of economy related to the advertising, CG, hospitality, things like that. So today we're going to talk and discuss what should we do, how do we increase the economic engagement of the women in Ukraine based on the international experience. And I'd like to represent our today's speakers on the panel. And before that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Natalia Mikolska, and I'm the co-founder of the platform for increase of women's capabilities, She Experts, and a member of supervisory board to Praduker and Erho. And I've also participated with the Kyiv School of Economy. Today we have here Marina Lazebna, the Minister for Social Policy of Ukraine. And online we have Kamal Kara, she's the MP from Canada, and this is one of the most progressive countries in the world in terms of gender issues, and greater possibility for women than Nina Yuzhanina, the MP of Ukraine. We also have Ruslana Remarska, she's the founder and the director of the company Let's Be Healthy, and they have a very famous gluten-free cookie brand, Smakuli, so everyone please enjoy that. We also have Christina Patik, she's the entrepreneur. She's producing a lot of things under the fashion label Zerno. We also have Miroslava Drahomerdicka. She's a famous orthodontist and an honorary president of the Association of the Ukrainian Orthodontists. And she is the owner of a business, a large one, and a very important one. We also have the owner of a family business, Ravlikova Dolina, and that's self-explanatory name. It's not about the gender equality, but it's about to speak about the investments, which is also an important aspect. We have Yuri Filuk, the CEO and initiator of the Promrilet renovation project, and this is also to speak about the social investments in innovations in Ukraine. So we'll start, and hopefully we'll have a fruitful discussion. And I would like to start by passing the floor to Kamal Kara from Canada. And my biggest question to you, what's Canada doing to ensure that women are mostly engaged in a lot of economic issues? And what is the role of the government in order to make sure that more successful women would be participating in certain entrepreneurs, more successful women would be working as CEOs, as board directors? Please.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm extremely pleased to be part of a panel with such amazing Ukrainian entrepreneurs and politicians. We're fortunate here in Canada to have a prime minister who is a declared feminist and who promotes gender equality in government and in society. That means women's economic empowerment is a frequent topic of discussion at the cabinet table. There is no doubt that women entrepreneurs are extremely critical to Canada's economy. But in 2014, women-owned businesses represented only 15% of small and medium enterprises. Whether because of historical biases or other challenges, women have sometimes struggled to become successful business owners. Along the way, we have learned that women need support to establish and grow their businesses, whether that means access to credit, to mentors, to dedicated support networks. So when COVID-19 hit small businesses hard, the government did not hesitate to introduce legislation to ensure that they continue to serve their communities and make a strong recovery possible. Our experience in Canada shows that when institutions, when policies, and when services target those most in need of support, we all benefit. So it is consistent that Canada is focusing its support for economic growth in Ukraine on those in the greatest need, including women entrepreneurs in the Donbass and other marginalized groups with limited access to resources and employment opportunities. While Canada is ready to support these small business owners, I can't stress enough the importance of inclusive government policy to underpin equitable economic development. Sadly, we know the pandemic had only exacerbated existing inequalities in Ukraine. Unemployment has risen, and women's caretaking duties have increased. Added to that, Ukrainian women make up to 83% of health workforce, so are at a greater risk of catching the virus. In the East, the poor state of water and health infrastructure, as well as poor access to health services, are added risks for a large elderly population in the time of COVID-19. I also understand that sexual and gender-based violence made worse by the pandemic affects the lives of 2/3 of all women in Ukraine. So to help respond to some of these challenges, Canada has provided a range of assistance. We've supported the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund and provided personal protective equipment. And in an exciting development, I'm extremely happy to announce a new $7 million Canadian project with the United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA, to address sexual and gender-based violence in Ukraine over the next 5 years, to coincide with the launch of 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. The project is also there to help develop a prevention and response systems in 30 municipalities throughout Ukraine and to promote zero tolerance for violence. These initiatives are extremely important for our short-term COVID response, but we also need to look at the long term. I think we can all agree that many challenges remain. Although 87% of women were elected to the Ukrainian parliament in 2019, that still accounts to only 20%. And in the private sector, 70% of managers are men. Canada's development projects support inclusive economic growth to help even the playing field. For example, Canada supported Ukraine to adopt the EU Charter of Equal Rights and Opportunities for Men and Women in Local Life. So far, 22 cities have given women better access to economic opportunities as a result. Canadian technical assistance has also supported more women-driven businesses. For example, the Soho Chic Apparel received targeted training and learned about the Canadian market. Because of the deals, they were able to sign with Canadian vendors. They were able to access financing for a new facility and have been able to hire more staff. For me, the key is that Canada will be there to support Ukraine as it works to rebuild its economy after COVID. And the Ukrainian women entrepreneurs are a critical component of that growth. So I encourage the government to listen carefully to the needs and help them participate in growing an economy that benefits all Ukrainian. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, it was extremely interesting to hear about the experience of Canada, as well as about some of the standing programs that are available in Canada. And we can go directly to the conversations in the studio. And I have the first question to the Minister of Social Policy. And this is the question regarding the command given by Kamal Kara. And she said that we are proud in Canada that our Prime Minister, openly speaking that he is a feminist, and we have the whole government policy in support of the gender equality and increasing capabilities of women in many spheres. I haven't heard similar statements from our Prime Minister. Maybe his earlier speech today contained some of such statements, and some of the proposals and positions of the government resulting the gender equality. And I'd like to hear your point of view, because everybody knows that pandemics struck hard at women. Do we see any plans in the government regarding the assistance to the women, helping them to overcome this situation, helping women entrepreneurs? So how women would survive that? Well, thank you. Thank you, Olena, for the invitation to the Congress. And indeed, I was looking at the forum for a couple of years. I've been listening to discussions, and today I have a feeling as if I amongst the counterparts, among the colleagues, as once I was working on the draft law on the employment, and I was thinking how to help the people, how to become economically independent, and then I left the job, and it happened so. I know all the problems. I know when there is an unemployment and you have a kid, and still you want to kind of implement your own ideas and implement your capabilities. Then for 4 years I was working as the physical entrepreneur, physical entity. So I also know all the peculiarities of those issues. Today I'm a minister, and I understand that I have to use this experience that I have accumulated over the years that I've spent working in many areas. So when COVID broke out, it was a stress, it was a shocking situation, really, and it was an all-round challenge for everyone. So I've started drawing up a map of people whom can we help. It's either a group of unemployed people who would go to the employment center, and we can also help to these category of people. And then I understood that physical entities, these entrepreneurs, they have to have an assistance as well, because they don't know where to go. Because if I'll not close my business for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I can wait for some time, for a couple of weeks, but they still have some time they can cope with, and there is nowhere they can go. So we've came up with this program for having payments for kids, and 87,000 of entrepreneurs used this possibility to acquire certain assistance for kids. We've supported 115,000 children with this financial benefits, financial assistance. And today there was a cabinet minister decision to re-establish this assistance, and we did the following. We have 87,000 women that have kids aged up to 10, and so automatically, whenever they file a special report or file a special document, we will re-establish their financial assistance for the kids. Of course, there are people who have not applied for this program before, but they will join us definitely. So today it was a very sort of social step towards our entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, because women tend to take care of their families and they're really nervous about doing the bread making for the family. Besides, the president has mentioned a number of proposals to support the entrepreneurs. You heard about this. I'm not going to comment on that, but I'd like to focus your attention on another aspect, which is also in there. As a woman, I clearly know what to count for when I retire on pension. I would need to have 35 years of work experience. And when something like that is happening to entrepreneurs, when you have that situation with the social benefits, then what should you do? These women will be left alone without pensions, or they could have a less pension. So the president and the parliament would consider different proposals, and we've came up with a number of things. All those periods when the person would receive an unemployment support, an unemployment benefit, all the benefits as part of this COVID time, they would be taken into consideration when calculating the pensions period. So the person have to be sure about tomorrow. So at a certain period of time, the people will be retired on pension. And today's situation will have an impact on the amount of pension. So what we suggest is not to take account these salaries and these wages into the calculation of the amount of pension. And the third issue, the physical entities, the entrepreneurs, they are unable to pay the minimum contribution because that depends on the minimum salary. And we are increasing the minimum salary from the 1st of January by 6,000. So the minimum contribution would be 1,300 hryvnia or 1,400 hryvnia, and they wouldn't be able to pay that. And that is why we're suggesting a new standard, and hopefully the parliament will support this. So the entrepreneurs have to pay depending on their practical incomes. So it's either you pay a minimum or nothing. I've talked to my colleagues from the European Union, and I told them about our situation. On the one hand, we'll have problems with the pension fund, but this would sort of deshadow the people's business. And they advise, follow the principle, let it be more, but let them pay less rather than different, because it will be hard for you to come up with the motivation for the others. And those legislative initiatives are currently on the presidential's table, and they're working on those initiatives. And today I want to share my idea, and I'm going to promote that idea as hard as I can. This is the pilot project, Hand of Assistance, and this is the project we were doing with the World Bank once, and I was one of the organizers of that project. And they wanted me to develop mechanisms for the support of IDPs and poor people. Try to ensure there is an employment for them. Since I know what is the employment, we could provide subsidies to businesses, to entrepreneurs, for them to employ this category of people, to offer them social benefits and things like that. And really, these are not the consumers of social packages. These are just the people who don't have an opportunity to implement their own potential, to uncover their potential. So I've offered these poor people to buy a business for them, to learn what they can do, and then to buy a business for them. I remember one woman, I had a conversation with them. She was doing some knitting and things like that, and she received state social benefits, and she said that she was selling that knitting to Israel. So we took her for our project. We've bought some equipment for her for state funds, and she has become a physical entrepreneur. she's become independent. So we're giving an impetus for people to, finalize the resolution of all their problems and challenges. So my mission here is to develop a program, all-Ukrainian program. We've had only 237 entrepreneurs. That's for third regions. Now imagine what have we provided to women. They have become independent, really. I mean, they're all mothers. You need to have something to bread make for the family. And we're told that you can come for assistance and support, but we'll give you even more. We're giving you a chance to become an entrepreneur. This is something like a motivation for them. And a lot of them has become entrepreneurs, and I'm proud of that project, really. That was a turning point in their life, like a microcrediting project. Once again, I'd like to say that you have to pay the taxes, right? But we're trying to help you with the business. And if you employ somebody else, then you won't pay for them. You'll just, all you need to pay the taxes, you'll become an independent person who can count on your own efforts and capabilities. So that's a great story, really.
It's about giving a person a fishing rod instead of feeding him fish so that the people can provide for themselves and for their children. These programs enabling women, giving them the seed capital and also an assistance in setting up their business, in defining the business model, incentivizing them in developing the business, hiring others are just the right things. Ms. Nina, you've worked in the field of lawmaking, helping support Ukrainian entrepreneurs, many women. So what can we do now at the legislative level so that we could help women's businesses to survive, because it's a matter of survival for the many? Secondly, to assist women who are now hesitating as to what they should do next, whether they should become business women. Let me start by saying that we'll hear from the successful businesswomen about what motivated them to start their business and how difficult it was to anticipate what was going to happen as they built their business. Me too, in 2003, I started my audit company, having been through all the circles of hell to receive the audit certificate, audit license, as it's a limited access profession, and the access to the profession is a very challenging one in this country, but I set out to do it as I loved the profession. I know that an auditor needs to be well vested in the law. He needs to have a sound footing in economics and finance to meet the qualifications of an auditor. So, having worked in my own company, I realized what drove the women to create their businesses. And let me share with you that it's not about the money. It's the self-realization that you talked about, its ability to prove it, that you can do much more. We can do the most daunting tasks when you set out with no financial support from outside, with no institutional support. Ms. Marina talked about this, but I'd like more people to know about the institutional support on offer to them. We need such centers in the regions. As we talked about the women in current business and politics, we're seeing that about 30% of women are amongst the top managers, about 28% of women are those having their own businesses, and 44% of women have micro businesses. These are private entrepreneurs. The top 100 richest people of Ukraine has only 3 women. Natalia, this is something I started off with. Now I hear the colleagues talking about it. I wanted to share my impressions. So something we need to focus on currently. The small business arena is very challenging. And it is so because it's difficult to break the threshold from being a small business into the medium business. We are stuck on reserving our status as a micro business, and as 44% women work in micro businesses, they know they still have to shoulder a lot of other responsibilities. And yes, women have more opportunities in modern times, and COVID era isn't so daunting for women, because now a woman can do a video conference from her kitchen, continuing cooking meals for her family, and still keeping an eye on a child next door doing a Zoom call for her studies. So women who are expert in multitasking are at their best in these times. But in these new times, men can also do their share, do paternity leaves, etc. But the civilized world hasn't fully harnessed the potential of women, hasn't given the women the opportunity to harness their potential, and we can do so much more. So now, for 7 or 8 years, I've been in the lawmaking business. It's something that I always keep in my mind's eye. The child allowance that was paid out was given to children up to 10 years of age. So perhaps we have to reconsider this criteria and reconsider the definition of child dependence. If we are talking about people employed in small and medium or large businesses, we need to define the threshold limit of their payroll. So we have to set the boundaries right. I know that the statistics that you've given now, that during the pandemic, a lot of women lost their businesses and lost their jobs because they predominantly staffed the services and catering and hospitality businesses. So we, as women in politics and in government, have to think what we can do to work together to make a thorough analysis of the field and identify the women that need support most. We need to give most support to women entrepreneurs. And another thing I'd like to say that a lot of sectors of economy that came to a halt during the pandemic, like the cafes, boutique effect, that are proudly owned by women who bake, the confectionaries who make the best coffee, they had to shoulder the burden without cutting the pay to their employees, because their employees are their family. And that's an example of women taking the responsibility, protecting even their employees as their families. Thank you very much. We have 4 businesswomen in here with us, and it's going to be very interesting to hear from them in the context of what you were saying. We have the minister who's an entrepreneur, and you have entrepreneurial background. I also had private business background, and then I worked for the government, and I'm in business back. So I'd like to hear from the business women about what motivates them, what drives them. They want to do something good, they want to create something. What place is given to making a profit, and if it doesn't take the first precedence, why it doesn't take the first priority? Ruslana, shall we start with you? Ms. Nina, I felt you talked about my business because that's the way things are for us. I think of the people I'm responsible for, first and foremost. As to what motivates me to do business, it's certainly to realize myself, but in Smakuli business, I had no alternative for my family, for my kids, so I had to create a product with a mindset on business that would generate a profit, but also with the mindset of being a socially responsible business. And my colleagues who have businesses and who've shouldered the responsibility to be a socially responsible business, they are mostly women. So I would say that the motivation for us is self-realization, doing something good, and only then followed by generating a profit. So creating a value. Christina, what about you? What was driving you? One of my former employers used to say that you could pay me more because I'm a woman. If I have a husband, then I don't really need to be paid at all. That's when I started my own business. I wouldn't say this was my key motivation, and it wasn't about money. It was about my desire to follow my calling, to take on responsibility, care for the people. And today, because I have a female business, 90% of the people who work for my company who partner as my outsourced partners and contractors and colleagues are mostly women. So at the time of pandemic, we haven't stopped, but we have stepped up the effort by 500%. But for the difficult time, we would have scaled much faster. But due to the economic restrictions, we've managed to retain the revenue. We've kept the staff, and we launched a lot of activities we've done before. We've done a lot of promotional campaigns earlier, but they were mostly lectures and master classes about ethnic and crafts because that's our field. But now we decided we would reach out to support the small businesses as mentors, and we have high-level mentors joining us. It's a great honor for me, and I'm most grateful to them. And it's the greatest benefit for people joining to hear them online and offline, and people share their expertise in different areas, including business. We conduct networking events, bringing in business community. I'd like to welcome you. And we pitch our products, we share information, we network, and that's how people get to know each other and can pitch themselves and their products. Due to the lockdown, you're thinking survival, but also you're broadening your corporate social responsibility. I am truly inspired, and I am truly amazed by the ability of small and micro businesses at a time of crisis to think beyond survival, to think of those in their reach. I'd like to say another important thing. It was very important for us to support. Having heard about the program, I realized that I was very busy. I was very busy with the business and the family, and I thought it would be good to hear about opportunities out there because these are colossal opportunities. I'm very grateful that at this time of trial, the Pinchuk Foundation and Coca-Cola Company is allocating funds, and we received a grant that helped us create a new website that we're launching next week. And I never thought that these opportunities would be available at such a difficult time. Super. Valentina, what drove you? You have a family business too. At the lockdown, you're together in the same boat, working together. Do you still have the motivation? Welcome. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be in such wonderful company with such good friends. When I was on maternity leave, I found the motivation to start my business. My husband and I were in farming. We had raspberries, but with a baby on hand, you have to commit your time, your love and energy to a baby. Then you find yourself by the wayside and started thinking, what will I do next? Once your husband has shouldered the responsibility, it will be difficult to take it over from him back. That's what I was thinking. So I started looking out for opportunities, looking for something I could do that would engage me. As a business person, you have to do what you love, what will not be a job for you, and money isn't the decisive thing. The satisfaction is what's most fulfilling. I love cooking. I have 2 degrees, one in economy, one in law, but I love cooking. And we always cook something nice, bake something nice when we have the time. So I was surfing some sites for new business ideas as I had the time to look into the question, and I came across the snail farms. At that time, we were 4 years in the making. My parents have been in business for over 30 years, and my father told me, God, how are you going to sell it? How are you going to export it? Think twice before you do it. So I told my daddy, look, I'm your daughter. Am I not? I'm going to give it a try. I've set out my mind on it, and I want to try it. And we launched this project. I did it as a mom. And with the foreign currency exchange rate unstable, you wanted to play safe. And the snails sold in Europe. That gave us some security that women seek, that you can have a greater foreign exchange rate security. But when I started cooking, I started experimenting. I started using my product in our meals. Well, I'm Ukrainian, and I'm better off with cooking borscht, but snails is something different. So my husband said, no, Ukrainians are not going to eat snails. I said, fine. That really had me going. I was triggered by the failure. I experimented in my free time, and I did make it a success. I have my craft sauces, and when the tourists come in and they want to see the farm, I treat them with those delicacies, with the filled snails, marinated snails, catered for the Ukrainian tastes. Because at that time, 3 years ago, there was no culture of eating snails. That's what your daddy told you. What does he say now? Now he says that I am his girl, I am his daughter. That's important. That's family business, being what it is. Now, Miroslava, for many, you work in a typical women field with a lot of professional women, dentists, orthodontists. But when we look at the private clinics, private businesses, they're usually men-owned. There are many women professionals, but the business side is usually done by men, or at least it's co-owned by many women. What drove you, and why do you feel there are so many professional women but so few successful business women in the field? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your motivation. I'll share mine. Because in private business, in healthcare, I've been for more than 25 years. Initially, what drove us was to create the environment for ourselves. You know what the dentistry was 25 years ago. So we wanted to revolutionize the world, then equip us with the materials because we were eager to do something new. We were aware of the novel technologies out there. We wanted to buy them and use them. And most importantly, apart from creating this working environment for ourselves, I said that the Ukrainian people deserve a better treatment. I said so 25 years ago. They are entitled to a better treatment and painless dentist care.
So we were the one who introduced new stereotypes into the minds of the people, that there will be no pain while curing their teeth. So after 25 years, it means even more for them. It's aesthetics. It's absolutely normal things that you can receive in an absolutely painful manner, painless manner. And this is where we came up with the private offices, and then we've developed into a series of small hospitals in Kiev and Lviv. And I'm trying to implement the necessity of using the right technologies and implementing professional achievements. Definitely, when it goes to medicine and dentist medicine, for many years I was the president of the Association of Orthodontists. And when we ran the first conferences, there were only women participating in the conferences. Now, abroad, it was mostly kind of a male profession. And when they came to Ukraine, they saw a lot of clever and beautiful doctors who came to hear some new methods, something else. Of course, now the tendency is changing. We have more and more men working at the orthodontists. And the heads of medical businesses, in mostly cases, these are the men, really, but it's not that we call it a man's business or a women's business. Speaking of a business itself, we're talking about the thing that it's a generalist issue. There has to be a leader who's capable of taking the risks and accepting certain risks. It's not that I want to have my own business. Look, we cannot make the woman a leader. She has to take her own path. She needs to make her own decision. And all those who have an inner potential, an ability to risk, an ability to take responsibility over the team, over your subordinates that you have established. Now, all of that depends on the leadership skills. So I believe that there is no difference between men and women. There are certain aspects. I mean, we have here a lot of experts sitting at this table and we're discussing, and we can call ourselves an Amazonian, for examples. We're talking about the equal rights and possibilities, how the women have to implement themselves and become successful. I'm sure that after a certain period of time, this is the issue that is not going to be raised in the society, because everything would be resolved. Now it's different because we can show the example, we can inspire others to change, and that is why it's so important. Not all the doctors are perfect leaders, and for many years spent in the private business, I was overstretched, really, because I was a professional doctor and in the same time it was the manager of a business, and you have to resolve a lot of administrative issues. And this is difficult. So everyone has to listen to himself, whether he wants to be a private entrepreneur or he wants to work for a different company. Because one thing would require risks, the other is not. That's an important issue, because I've heard a lot from you, and one word was mentioned by every one of you. That is responsibility. Somebody told about the responsibility for ecosystem, for the family, for the kids. But in any way, responsibility is something that is absolutely important for women business. This is the inner feeling of responsibility of what you're doing. And I would like to ask Yuri for his commands, because you are engaged in a social businesses and you are developing a super innovative project for Ukraine. I haven't heard any similar projects. You have an interesting board at the entrance to the prom prelate with the names of investors, those who invested money to your project. And when I was there the last time, there were 2 or 3 women out of 30 investors, and I asked, why is that? Why, among all the investors of your project, you have 30 men and only 3 women, as we understand that some of the men were investing family money into that, and you could write like Ivan and Mary and things like that. Do you understand the reason for that? And what do you think we should do for women not to be afraid of taking the risks, and for them to go public and tell that they're investing together with their husbands? Well, I was considering myself a very progressive and open person, and a couple of years ago I've started this project, and it was conversations about gender equality. I really didn't understand the problem about the gender equality. I thought there is not a problem, that everyone has equal rights and opportunities. And then gradually I started to realize that I'm a classic example of a standard human, standard man, that feels not so much of discrimination, really. And because of the critical thinking, I have to come up with really different patterns that prevent us from understanding the true disbalance that exists. And this is not a major problem, really, because if you take a look at the structure of our investors, and our model is based on joint investments issue, indeed, we have 30% of women and 70% of men, and our audience is more of a middle class of the Ukrainian society. And if you take a look at the category of investors with larger contributions, that is starting from $100,000 and more, half a year ago, I thought that we had a problem, really, because we had around 25 investors, and they were only men. And I tried to analyze why this is happening, and then we started working with that issue. We have 3 women, and we have one case of a family investment, that is joint investment by husband and wife. So we're trying to make some gradual steps forward as a social organization, really. There are situations when there are only women management, and but if you take a look at that business, you would see that, in fact, the supervisory board is mostly connected with the men. Why am I saying that? That the first level of resolving that problem is understanding the problem. And this is a joint task that we have to take the society to a joint understanding of the challenge, especially when it goes for the men. And we can really see the statistics of the middle class and really they don't have that much of a women on those statistics surveys. This is more of a problem that we've inherited from the former society, and still I believe that we have a positive trend and we have to develop this trend. Thank you, Yuri. I believe that Ukrainian Women's Congress plays one of its role, that is informing the society on the problems and challenges that are there, that are influencing a lot of the movement. Because when we are speaking aloud about those challenges, we can see and we can hear the points of view of other people, because I know a lot of people have not faced this discrimination in their life and their professional career, which is absolutely incredible for me, because there are people who never face discrimination. There are people who face with discrimination. There is another problem. We have to mention that there are a lot of things which are discrimination in the rest of the world, while not considered a discrimination in Ukraine, when you're not asked when you don't receive a question like how old is your kid during the employment interview, and my kind of natural response was, have you asked that person to my colleague? Because that sort of traditional question that could be asked and the employer has the right to know. But on the other hand, it's a question that poses a difficult and different environment for women. And now I'd like to go into a small round of quick questions. And please make sure you provide a response within 1 minute. Ms. Marina, are you ready to lobby special programs for women entrepreneurs within the program 579 of the cabinet, or thinking of introducing special programs for compensation to women entrepreneurs? Look, of course I'm ready, but I am supporting the gender neutral legislation. So it was my idea not to introduce the information about the gender and age in some of the advertisements. Recently, I was interviewed by a male journalist, and he's saying, like, you were the only one in the cabinet as being a woman. It's easier for you to solve certain questions, and there has to be a respect to the women, because responsibility is a good thing, but there has to be a situation where you move away from the stereotypes, because there has to be a respect towards the women. So that's the story I want to share with you. Thank you, Marina. Nina, please, if you would have an opportunity tomorrow to implement 3 initiatives to support the female entrepreneurs, what they would be? Well, considering our conversation and discussion, I think it would be good to start regional centers in support of the women's business. And then I would like to share all the available information in support of the business among the women. And really, we've covered a lot of the topics, and the standard things do not work in case of the Ukrainian government, because we're lacking a proper source for spreading information, because not everybody watches TV. So there has to be certain tools that could be used to spread the information. I would like to find out about this, and I would like to provide support to those physical entrepreneurs who just started their business. So we need to understand how to turn them into medium businesses, because the largest problem in the economy that we have is that we have a small business and a large business, but we don't have a medium businesses. And this is something that we need to develop. Well, I'm taking this magical wand out of you, and hopefully maybe some others would be speaking on that. Now, 3 things that could be done as well in that aspect. three things that has to be done by the government or by the business or by the consumers in order to have more successful women entrepreneurs. Well, first, what the government can do for the entrepreneurs. I support the idea that the government needs to support both the men and women business, and Ukraine needs the support and assistance. We are talking about this 579 project, but this is not enough, really. And so certain assistance needs to be provided for the scaling of the business. It could be either in the form of credits or maybe some other assistance packages, funding not only of the startups, but the transition processes as well, the transition from startups into something much bigger. And I believe that the large companies in Ukraine, they would need to think of preserving the ecosystem of a micro and micro business, because we are all in the same boat, really. And it's unacceptable today that we are producing something for the retail business, so it's not good for the small business to face a more rigid laws or regulations in order to work with some of the retailers. What I face is the lack of coaching and mentoring. I try to use the experience of others, and I'm trying to provide assistance to other women, but without the consulting, without the support, it's very difficult. And Ms. Christina, please. Well, on the part of the government, we need proper crediting, because this is just as a fuel for a car. It won't move without it. And because some people, they simply forget the situation when they don't have the money or they're lacking the money. So offering credits or grants or something like that would be absolutely important. On the part of the society, there has to be an understanding whom are you paying to, who is producing this or that product, so buy locally. Well, thank you for the question. Well, I'll be providing the answer from my own point, and it would be good for the state to provide more explanations. How do you export your products? Because we have a lot of producers, but we don't have too many of the companies who could buy the product and then export it. So more training programs would be helpful, because really there is a program that one would buy from oneself, and it's important to launch a project to support the Ukrainian producers. Well, these are the most important aspects. Well, definitely some state support in the form of grants or medical reform would be great to have. I know it's a difficult process, particularly when it goes to medical reform. One more thing, we have to be united. We have to get united as women, and it's great that we have the Congress, because whenever we are talking about the men, they have their sort of inner circle. They're trying to help one another, and we have to take that example. We have to become united. We have to join with the other women who have their own skills, experience. And the other thing that I'm proud that I have become an example for someone, and somebody would be taking my experience. And what can we do to have more women in Ukraine investing openly, not only just establishing their own business, but investing? I'll try to provide a broader answer. We all need to learn and to look at some aspects in a wider approach, because if we have certain processes activated, and if we have some processes that are not activated properly, then it might mean that we're not using all of the potentials. And our Canadian colleagues say and explain why they are investing so much into the women's economic contribution, because they're saying that that's additional input for the economy. That's an additional 15% that could be very well used for the economy. So we need to use this added value for our own economy. And in this case, we would not be solving the problems of maternal support, but instead we should be talking about the parental support and parental upbringing of their kids. We have to unveil all of the potential that we have, look at what components do we have, and then one would entail other and other and other, and it would be really a motivation for the women not to kind of close themselves and to be open. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the participants of this discussion. And really, sort of a summary. I have a dream. I dream about more successful women for Ukraine in business, in social activity, in policy, in science, in all spheres. And I believe that we have talked about this recipe. The first and the most important is that we have to motivate one another. We have to join. We have to unify. We have to become mentors for one another. Of course, we have to motivate and require the state to provide funds for supporting the businesses and startups. It's absolutely important that we keep talking about this, that we keep educating one another. So thank you, everyone, for joining this Congress. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this discussion. And hopefully all of you will write some inspirational notes in your social network pages. And thank you to the partners of the Ukraine Women Congress for their support.
Подякую всім.